Hi, I'm Skinny Cheeks. Just wanted to do a quick follow-up video today talking about the Carve and Stampede changes. I did a patch note review covering the changes, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. I'm not going to go through them all again in this video, but the reason I bring this up is because I'm noticing a trend in the comments saying stuff like, I'm kind of sad seeing the two-handed skill line get nerfed so hard, and RIP Carve, and so on. And judging by the number of likes on some of these comments, it seems like others are sharing in these feelings. So maybe this is partially my fault and I didn't do a good job in the last video of presenting it, but overall two-handers, specifically Carve and Stampede, are still in a really great spot. It was more of a rework than a straight nerf, and it will result in higher damage in some setups and lower damage in other setups. I think people saw the patch notes and saw that the damage per second from these skills went down, and they just stopped there without thinking any further into it. But whenever you get an extended length on an ability, you also have to factor in the extra time you get for casting your main spammable ability, as that contributes to your damage as well. So let's break down Stampede first. Working from the base tooltips, these are the tooltips you get with no gear on and no stats added, so just a base character. The DPS from the old Stampede was 669 and the new one is 595. This includes both the upfront hit and the dot left behind. I think a lot of people just stop there and say nerf, but you have to continue on. So the old timer on Stampede was 10 seconds and the new timer is 15 seconds. So where did those meet up? At 30 seconds. So in 30 seconds with the old way, we'd have 3 casts of Stampede, and with the new way, on the 15-second timer, we'd only have to cast it twice. So just looking at the damage alone in 30 seconds, the old version is obviously ahead of the new version since we are just multiplying the DPS by 30. But once you add in that extra spammable cast too, you can see depending on the strength of that spammable, you will end up ahead of the old version. And this obviously varies a bit because all spammables aren't the same damage, but any route you go here still ends up a little bit ahead of the old version for overall sustained damage, even if the DPS from Stampede by itself is a little lower. So Stampede overall is a buff, not a nerf. A very, very tiny buff in some cases, and a more significant one in others. Side note also about Stampede, I saw that some people were a bit worried about the Maelstrom two-hander, so the tooltip on that is a 7-second bleed. There was some confusion around that about the 7-second duration compared to the 15-second Stampede ability, but that Maelstrom two-hander actually refreshes with each tick of Stampede, so you end up getting that merciless charge dot for the full Stampede dot. It is a little strange how it works. It looks like they have the dot stop refreshing at 8 seconds into Stampede, and so then it just ends at the same time as Stampede. But not really a big deal since you are going to be refreshing Stampede every 15 seconds anyways. Just wanted to clear that part of it up as well. Alright, let's get into Carve now. This is a little bit more tricky and not quite as cut and dry as Stampede. So the base DPS of the old version of Carve worked on a 12-second timer that stacked up in damage, and the new Carve works on a stacking timer instead up to 30 seconds in length. The base DPS for the full 3-stacked Carve was 711 in its old form and will be 361 in the new form. This is factored with the old Carve timer at 10 seconds and the new timer at 28 seconds. Since you don't actually get that last tick with Carve if you want to keep your stacks, you have to always refresh it early before the last tick goes off. So again, we're going with 10 seconds for the old timer and 28 seconds for the new timer. Using those times, those skills would meet up at 140 seconds for the first time with 14 casts of the old version and 5 casts of the new one. There is a little bit of nuance here not included, with the old Carve not ticking as high for stacks 1 and 2 and the duration for the new Carve being lower for stacks 1 and 2, but we'll just focus on the full 3-stacked versions here. So damage obviously is much higher over the duration with the old Carve. However, we do find ourselves with time for 9 extra spammables due to the longer timer on the new Carve. Once that is factored in, it still isn't quite as strong as the old version of Carve, though some spammables will come very close, but there are some other things to consider as well. With the new version, you will be spending less time on your back bar, which means you'll be on a bar with higher stats for a higher percent of the encounter. This is hard to put into an exact amount, but definitely has an effect on your DPS levels, as all of your ground dots will tick for higher levels while you're on your front bar. That is something you can't simply ignore when comparing the old and the new versions. Another thing I think is worth mentioning is that this is just comparing to the old triple stacked Carve damage. So some fights may be tough to keep Carve up at 3 stacks at all times, and there's always human error as well. Maybe a boss teleports right before you were intending to reapply your Carve stacks, so they drop off and now you have to rebuild from the start. Obviously there are plenty of encounters in the game where it isn't tough to keep up the full 3 stacks, but still something I think is worth considering when making a comparison. If you lose the stacks from the new version, it is much less punishing since the dot always ticks for the same amount, and it will be much easier to maintain those stacks with that higher timer. And then finally, I just wanted to compare Carve to a few other non-class dots that we have access to. So this is comparing it up next to Flame Reach, which is the dot from the destruction line. And I did go ahead and include the 12% increase from having a flame staff, as well as 10% from engulfing flames to make it more realistic with what you'd see there. And then rending slashes from the dual wield line and mystic orb from the undaunted line. You can see the new version of Carve is still going to be one of the best dots we have available to us in the game. Is it able to tick as crazy high as it was before? No, but it probably shouldn't have been on par with some of the best class dots in the game. And the new extended duration is nothing to scoff at, especially on classes with really nice strong spammables. Anyways, I just wanted to go back through those and hopefully clear up some confusion. End of the day, Stampede and Carve are both in really great spots still, and I just wanted to debunk the early theories that two-handers got gutted with these changes. Thank you all for watching. A big thanks to my current Patreon supporters. If you want to see how you can help to support to keep these guides coming, there will be a link to the Patreon in the description with options for as little as $3. And the YouTube membership button is now live as well with the same benefits set up as the Patreon if you're more comfortable with that sort of thing. A special thanks to Nicholas, Simon, Cougar's Bay in the Cougar City Guild, the Order of War Guild, Iffy, Cantankerous Cat, Shady, Blakewin816, Mordecai1212, and my wonderful wife. I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.